So you can't save until you know what you are spending. In the same time, the flip side of that, the conundrum, the catch-22, however you want to describe it, is that you really shouldn't be spending until you know what you want to be saving. And that gets us into budgeting, putting together a budget. And when we talk about a budget, Craig, and you can chime in with this, the pushback that we get is usually because people feel like we're telling them you can only spend money a certain way or a certain amount or what the limit is when we're talking about budgeting. Like it's going to constrain me or contain me with what I'm spending.
Well, I think there's always an initial fear if someone doesn't budget regularly at looking at what they're spending, because they know they may overspend in certain areas, and sometimes you can justify it in your mind until you start putting it all down pen to paper, because pen to paper really is unemotional about it. It's just giving you back the information.
It's not really about the whole idea of, hey, you're going to spend X on this and Y on that and a certain percentage here and a certain percent. No, it's about where you're spending your money. Like Craig said, it's getting a handle on where your money is being spent. And right now, the reason we put this one in place for now and why we're doing the other one, the next one on budget and cash flow in August, is because it's a great time if you haven't done it. Or even if you, like Craig said, you think you've done it, but it's time to take a look at it, because now you've got 6 months of expenses and 6 months of, we were sort of coming out of COVID. Now we're sort of out of COVID and we're starting to spend again. So you're getting a little bit more handle. You can sort of take a look at what have I done over the last 6 months and what I can now project the next 6 months. Build that better budget, right? So, first thing when looking at this is understanding it's an ongoing process, right? So budgeting doesn't happen automatically. The idea, like Craig said, facing the reality of putting everything down on a piece of paper or putting it into an Excel spreadsheet or into some other software, is a concentrated effort. You got to do it, but it does take some time. And unless you're going back and really looking at the last 6 months and averaging it out, you're usually guesstimating. Wow. And the first thing is knowing your income, right? There's the first thing. You got to know how much money's coming in. But now we get to, as Craig said, the outflow. And the first thing are those must-pay expenses. So this is the way we break it down for everybody. You've got must-pay expenses. Those are the bills. The insurance, the utilities, the grocery, that's putting food in the refrigerator, not eating out. That's groceries in terms of the expenses. A lot of those, the rent or mortgage, they're going to be static payments. That means they're the same every month. Some of them are variable. They change. What it costs to heat the home in January is not what, especially like today, it's not, what it costs to heat the home now. But you've got the sense of here's what those expenses have looked like out over time. So you can give an estimate of this is what my monthly must-pay expenses look like.
Yeah, so the problem is most of the people I work with are very good at paying their bills. Right? They know they got to pay the bill. They get it paid on time, and they have no issue with that because they see that as a responsibility. The problem, though, is they don't see paying themselves as a responsibility. They don't see themselves as a bill. They don't see saving as a priority.
We get to discretionary expenses, as Craig talked about. The fun, right? That's where we can start putting in, now I've got X amount left over for going out to eat, going to games, doing whatever it is that you want to do, and the problem is we tend to look at it sort of the other way around. Like Craig said, we tend to do the discretionary stuff and then think about saving, paying ourselves after that. Right, so this is just, those ideas of little tips as far as saving or trying to take some of that emotion out, right? So the cash only thing isn't meant as, hey, you're only going to spend cash from now on. Let's face it, nobody really carries cash anymore, especially in now COVID, right? Nobody had cash. That was the thing. No, cash only means just take like 2 days out of a month and say, the only money I'm going to spend today is the cash that's in my pocket. So setting a little bit bigger goal that's on a shorter term will help you saving and get into the habit of doing that. Shopping with a list is just that whole thing. These are all about, daily things that go on. Let's face it, we walk into a store, sometimes we come out with more than we had really intended to do. That's the same thing with the cart. That's what that's referring to, because the shopping cart was originally intended as a utilization, a helpful tool. Now they have like the same storage as a small SUV, basically, when you go in and look at some of those things. So it's just only go in and buy what you need, or use the list to buy what you need. And then the cooling off period, which is really the biggest one for us that we always try to stress with everybody, is really trying to decide, all right, I'm going to buy this. Do I need to buy it today? Can I take the next 24 hours and then come back to it and decide, do I really need it? This is that whole emotional component. Did I really need to buy this, whatever the item is, today? Or can I hold off and come back to it tomorrow and see, do I still have the same luster and love for it that I did yesterday? And now it's maybe, well, you know what, I could really do without this. So 5 steps here. So here's 5 things as a takeaway, sort of to help you be better at saving money, right? So the first thing is, tracking, recording your expenses. This gets into it goes all the way back to the budgeting thing about knowing where you're spending your money. But this is more of knowing where you're spending your money on a regular and frequent basis. Is really, for us, the visual analogy is buckets, to think about where your money's going. Savings, where are you saving your money, how you're saving your money, and where they should go. And we define it as the bucket strategy, and we'll talk about that. Don't get so caught up in the nickels and dimes, which is treat yourself like a bill. Right? So bucket number 1 is short-term, or what we call your emergency reserves. So in financial planning, Craig, what do they tell people? There's 3 to 6 months of expenses, basically.
That's a starting point.
Once that bucket is filled, then we move on to buckets 2 and 3. Bucket 2 is your midterm. Something that you're saving for that is, say, 12 to, out towards 7 or 8 years out, right? That type of thing. And then bucket number 3 is longer term, anything that goes beyond, say, 10 years time frame when you really look at it. So you're not putting money in buckets 2 and 3 right now, but your focus should be getting bucket number 1 filled. Once bucket number 1 is filled, then we move on and start pouring more money into buckets 2 and 3.
Have questions? Ask us. We can help with that. You can email Craig at crichardson@aresfoundation.org, or you can visit the website to learn more about what we do and how we might be able to help you. www.aresfoundation.org. Want to see more of this recording? Go to www.aresfoundation.org/events. If you know an organization or community support group that could benefit from one of our workshops, reach out to Tom T. Alessi at aresfoundation.org. Our mission is trying to help everyone have a better relationship with their money.